Around a year ago, I bricked my old vintage Oberheim OB-12 by using a modern computer to try to push an update to it. So once I got all that fixed, I decided, hey, let's try to figure out an old computer solution to make sure this doesn't happen again. And at first, I thought a tower with Windows 98, I don't want to deal with that. So I thought, hey, let's make this more fun and start looking at laptops. So doing that, I mean, there's a bajillion of them that can do that. That's boring. What I decided to do was come up with a 20-point system, which I called Wolf to Wolf. So Wolfenstein 3D to Return to Castle Wolfenstein, and see if I can find a laptop that will fit there from 1991 to about 2001 and run all software, and in this case, benchmarking them with games, because that's going to use the highest amount of CPU and GPU usage and sound usage, and then rate those laptops on a score of 1 to 20. So with this, I have a ton of laptops that I've installed 98 and some XP on, but all of them are running 98. All of them have SSDs, and I'm waiting the score. Half of it is in the sound quality, so it doesn't matter if it's completely DOS compatible, and the display quality. So higher points going to a 4:3 display, but all of them are running Windows 98. Beyond those first 10 points for the display and sound, there's a point for running the full DOS version of Wolf 3D with AdLib sound and Sound Blaster sound effects, or whatever way that you get sound effects and music. And there's another point given if it can run DOSBox at full speed and run Wolf 3D like that. If there is hardware volume control. So on a lot of laptops, there's a very small percentage of them that actually have DOS compatible hardware volume. So I get an extra point if you can do hardware volume. Beyond that, right in the middle, if you can run a 3D accelerated version of MechWarrior 2, you also get a point. And then finally, to Return to Castle Wolfenstein, if you can run it at low res, 640 by 480, you get a point. If you can run it at 800 by 600 or above, at least 30 frames per second, you also get another point. You get a point if you have hardware wavetable sound. Another point given if the fan noise is low. So as soon as the Pentium 4 showed up, laptops got very noisy. So you get an extra point if you're quiet. You get a point if you have a CD drive. You have a point if you get a floppy. So hopefully with that criteria in mind, this will help you. And if you've been looking at any of these for some particular reason, I know there's a fan base of some of these laptops out there, it'll help you make that decision. From the outset, our lowest performing laptop in this test, the Sony PCG-F580, looks on paper like it would be a great option, but it quickly falls apart. First of all, the hardware Sound Blaster compatible sound card is locked to IRQ9, which makes it practically unusable for most DOS applications. So pure DOS and sound, pretty much out. The nice 15-inch screen is one of the best, but it has terrible scaling. The 3D video card, if you want to actually call it 3D, is made by Neomagic. It can't complete 3D Mark 2000 without crashing. And also, in 3D, Direct 3D here, it is green for some reason. The video card only detects 3D graphics in DirectX when it is in 16-bit mode. If it is in any 24-bit, 3D disappears. In our test, it will not do Wolf 3D with actual sound, even though it does have the hardware, because it's simply not compatible. It will play DOSBox Wolf 3D, but there are much better options for that than this. The screen should be good, but the scaling from Neomagic is quite awful, as you can see here. At least it does fill the entire screen. It does not have hardware volume control, at least with the drivers that I can find. The sound is loud, but fairly anemic from the speakers. Yeah, so here we go, we crashed. It can play MechWarrior 2 at a very weird, with a glide wrapper. It is.
HQ, this is Alpha Assault. I'm on my way, bearing 025. ETA 34 seconds. Alpha Assault, this is Bravo Cadet. I've got bandits all over me. Get down here. Sit tight, Bravo 3. I've got visual. I've got evacuators out.
Additionally, with the Yamaha hardware, with the Yamaha DSXG hardware, MechWarrior 2 has a constant popping sound. This happens on the 744 on both this and the Toshiba laptops. It's super annoying. Take a look at that. This does run, but is very, very strange.
External camera engaged.
It will not play RTCW at all at low or high resolution. The fan noise is fairly low. It does have a CD drive and it does have a floppy drive. Again, the display is very similar to our very highest ranked models, but with the video card that's included here, it's below average. The display is very nice at native resolution, but anything less is just completely subpar due to the scaling. This is the Gateway 600 YG2. The first question, if you're going through all of these laptops, is asking, why is this rated so low? Well, if you can't notice off the bat, the screen has very poor viewing angles. It changes even just barely tilting your head. And the screen is huge on this one. This is the first one that's got a 15.7 inch screen, and I think it's the only one. We have another 16 inch and then a 17 inch, but at 15.7 this is larger than almost all of the other laptops and is what I'd consider a super huge screen. It's also 5x4, so it doesn't match the native aspect ratio of other devices. This also starts our Pentium 4 laptops. So being a Pentium 4, they use a lot more power and make a lot more noise. This one has a very smart cooler interface here where you pull out the keyboard and it's just heat directed straight out there. So compared to, say, the Dells at this time, it has a much better thermal design. It does not have hardware volume control, even though the volume controls are here. Those are software and they work in XP. And Windows 98, they do not work. And I cannot find software to make them work because obviously this is an XP machine. Back in 2000, this screen would have been, and I'm just harping on the screen because that's what you see here is the screen. Back in 2000, this would have been a 4 out of 5 screen, but when this thing released, this is a poor screen for the time. So that's why I give it the rating that it is. It really comes down to that. The Radeon 9000 is performant. It is noisy, but it isn't that noisy. It is a big hunk of plastic, but the build quality seems fairly well for Gateways of the time, if Gateways was actually still one manufacturing these at the time. And I will also say this does have DOS sound. It's an ESS Allegro, but for DOS sound, it is terrible. It's absolutely terrible. The ESS Allegro is worse than using DOSBox, 100%. So I wouldn't recommend it. This is the Toshiba M200. What makes this different from the rest? It has a Wacom touchscreen and a pen. But let's go to Windows 98. Yeah, the touchscreen isn't going to work in Windows 98. This is a 12-inch screen with 1400 by 1050 resolution, which is really impressive, except that the touch interface kind of gives it this grainy look. It's not the prettiest display ever, but it does work. And this is probably the most portable high-end Windows 98 machine you're going to find. Now, with this being a hybrid tablet, it's not going to... Nice. Has analog volume control, but only one speaker. And that little speaker resides right there. So, not looking at the best audio ever. That's why I gave this such a low score for audio. But at the same time, you can do that. It has a GeForce 5200, so the graphics performance is actually really impressive for the time, and it's perfect for Windows 98. Well, it's not impressive really for the time that this actually came out, but it's impressive that you can get it to work in fully 3D for Windows 98. Sound is your bog standard AC97, so no troubles there. The keyboard is actually fairly nice. The trackpad is absolutely tiny though. That SD card slot does not have updated drivers for modern SDHC cards, so they're not going to work. There is no CD-ROM in this, so everything you're connecting is going to be via USB. It does have built-in Wi-Fi too. That built-in Wi-Fi does not work on Windows 98, nor will it likely ever work on Windows 98. Now this is the Sony that you want if you want a Sony classic machine. That is, unless you need DOS sound. This is the Sony GRT260G. There's a GeForce Go 560, a huge 16-inch screen, and I know some people out there hate glossy screens, but if you love Sony glossy screens, I think this is the biggest 4x3 glossy screen they ever put on a laptop. As far as specs go, it is a giant mid-2000s Pentium 4 machine, so you're going to get that Pentium 4 noise. You need to clean out the CPU fan if you get one of these, because it's likely full and going to be super loud, which you can significantly reduce the fan sound by going and cleaning that out and repasting the CPU. Also on this one, I downgraded the CPU to 2.4 gigahertz P4 just to make it a little bit more quiet as well. But that's one cool thing about this laptop, is that unlike most of the others, this one can run laptop and desktop CPUs. I mean, it is huge enough that you would think more would offer that, but you flip a little jumper over there and you can actually run either or. So I think that's super awesome. It does have volume control hardware, volume control in Windows XP. That does not work in Windows 98, and no one is likely to ever fix that. I/O is interesting on this because it does have video in, so you could capture analog video, and there's a memory stick port, which is also interesting. Sound on this is okay. It's not superb. It's above average. It's definitely above average, but the actual quality of the speakers is not exactly what you'd expect of a Sony entertainment device. I think they could have done a little bit better on this. So not the greatest in that regard. It is, I only have one battery, but I think it's actually configurable with 2 bays for 2 batteries. Good luck finding those. I'm not sure. I don't think this battery works very well. It's difficult finding Sony parts, Sony software, and pretty much everything Sony related, especially the drivers. But I do have this fully working in Windows 98. I think 1400 by 1050 is probably one of the best resolutions for Windows 98, simply due to the fact that there's no scaling options. So especially on a screen this large, 1400 by 1050 gives you the ability to have plenty of screen real estate, but you don't have a tiny, tiny start menu bar. So everything is perfectly readable. This is a huge 16-inch screen again. Really fantastic to look at, but unless you are prone to hating reflections, this is a reflection king. But with that glossy layer, it really boosts the contrast to something special. This is the Dell C840, one of the Dells we're going to be looking at in this video. This is right in the middle of what most people think of when they are going to get a vintage laptop, and there's a good reason for that. These are cheap. They're cheap and powerful. Now that doesn't mean they're perfect, so they're cheap for several different reasons. And the first one I want to get into is the plastic. This is my second C840, and this is a Frankenstein C840 from my other one that was destroyed in the mail. The plastic on these is incredibly brittle. It breaks even looking at it. This one has some glue, CA glue on the underside, but they break right around where the fans are. They break over here. The hinges will break. They're just not built that great. But on the flip side, parts are plentiful, parts are cheap. There's tons of old government issued laptops, so you can find the highest 1600 by 1200 screen, high resolution, fairly decent, and it's easy and cheap to get. You can probably get one of these laptops for $20. It has DOS sound, it has dual pointing. Some of the other things here that are unique and really actually useful on this laptop are the switchable drives. So this is a floppy, you can put a zip drive in there. I think you can do dual batteries, you can swap the battery easily on there. Hard drives easily accessible. I'm really not a huge fan of the I/O over here. The speakers on this are fine, and on the C840s they're fine, but on some models you might find that they're dead. And those are not easy to find replacements for. At least I haven't found easy replacements for the speakers. Okay, the biggest problem with these, P4 based, and all the heat is right here. The heat, it uses the keyboard as a heat sink. There's a tiny little thermal heat pipe to a little heat sink back here. Well, there's a fan not connected to the heat sink, 2 fans that blow, that make noise, and they blow through there. So there's utilities that kind of lower that sound. What I've done on this is I've put in a 2.2 gigahertz P4, so it's not using as much power, it's not as noisy, and I'm using the tools to silence it so that it can get a little warmer without blasting the actual fan noise, but the fan noise is super annoying. So you do pay for that cheapness, but again, like right in the middle, you can't go wrong with this particular model laptop.
Verify your identity. Before exiting the train, be sure to check your area for personal belongings. Thank you. and have a very safe and productive day.
Morning, Mr. Freeman. Looks like you're running late.
This is the Inspiron 8100. Unlike the C840 that we've also seen, this laptop uses a Pentium 3. I've swapped out the GPU to be the same, and for Windows 98, the huge benefit here is that the noise levels go down. Essentially here, the same heatsink design, it's really the same laptop except this one is a Pentium 3, which uses a ton less heat, is just as fast in any program that you're actually going to use. Also, you can get these cool wrist rests that soup up the color a bit. This one doesn't have the same problem as the plastic on the C840, but that might just be my examples of C840s have had that. This one doesn't have any cracks, but it does seem to be the exact same chassis otherwise. But the plastic does actually feel different on the Inspiron versus the C840. I don't know if other people have experienced that, but this one definitely gets a higher score. It's much more friendly for this type of application. And also, you can find these cheap. You can find them cheap and very expensive. People overpricing them preloaded with Windows 98. So watch out there. Otherwise, you can find them, you know, $20, $35. This is the Toshiba Satellite 3000. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this model is that it's the closest that you can get to the fan favorite Toshiba Satellite 2805 with NVIDIA GPU. Those are pretty impossible to get. These are not. Now the differences are mainly in the audio, where that has the hardware XG audio, this has AC97 audio, but they have the exact same GPU. This is an interesting laptop. I prefer the Toshiba touch pointing stick instead of the tiny trackpad. I find that works a lot better. I mean, if you have dual, that's nice as well. It does have hardware volume control, but unlike other Toshibas, it's not an analog dial. I don't think the buttons are quite as good. And you can also play CDs for some reason if the computer's off. The fan noise on this is either great with no audio, or the fan ramps up to 100% and is very noisy for a Pentium 3. Overall, I'd say this is a mid-range option. The screen is 1024 by 768. It does not have the greatest contrast ratio. It's very average in almost every single way. There isn't a specific reason why you would get this over some of the other laptops in this comparison. It's not a bad laptop. In fact, I like the removable battery here and the removable drive here quite nicely. It has a nice compact size, but again, not the greatest laptop ever. This is the Toshiba Satellite Pro 6100, and it is an excellent laptop. So I've read things about people having reliability issues with heat on this. I have not had that. Essentially, this is an XP machine that runs a slower Pentium 4 1.8 gigahertz. It has an NVIDIA GeForce Go 420, an amazing, for the time, 15-inch screen with great contrast ratio. Fairly decent actual speakers pointed at the user. What I like about this laptop is it's sort of in between huge and compact. For me, it's been super reliable. It does have AC97 audio, but it works perfectly with SB-EMU. I think there's a couple of tweaks you need to make sure to make sure that it actually works. I believe there are a couple of IRQ settings that you need to make or turn off the serial port to use SPEMU. But so you get sound, emulation, and DOS, pretty much the whole package here. And it is very, very quiet. Right now it's running at full tilt and you can't even hear it. So it's not the fastest Pentium 4. I'm generally not a huge fan of the Pentium 4 processors on these older laptops, but on this one, being a 1.8 and the cooling system designed well, it's really quiet. There is an SD card slot over here, like the other laptops that I'll be showing. There is no ability to use modern SD cards with it due to no update to SDHC. There's built-in Wi-Fi that none of these are going to work on Windows 98, and most excellently of all, there is analog audio control right here on the side. So you have an analog potentiometer that can go turn up or turn down the sound. And overall, this is a really nice laptop to use. If there are reliability issues, I mean, your mileage is going to vary on all these machines. I need to check what type of CMOS battery this uses. If it uses a NiCad, you're definitely going to want to replace that. If it's a lithium, it's going to be a simple coin cell change. I think by this time, all these laptops are going to be coin cell only. And as you can see on the black levels here on a matte screen, it's pretty much perfect. It's not the best screen in this competition, but it handles reflections and glare well. If you hate glossy screens like some people do, this is a pretty good bet. The one downside keeping this from being a perfect laptop is the DOS audio hardware. If it had DOS audio working hardware, if it had DOS native audio working hardware, not just emulation, I think a lot more people would be buying these and they would be hard to get. But at this time, you probably can get one for under $50. So again, your mileage is going to vary on how well they've been taken care of, since they're probably more of a corporate laptop. But they definitely have enough performance for anything that you want to run on Windows 98. This is the Toshiba Satellite Pro 4280X DVD. It's a 4200 series. I think I'm right on the other one. Going by what you'd find online, if you're looking for a classic laptop to run Windows 98, most people would say, this is a Windows 98 laptop, it's 500 megahertz. I've upgraded the RAM to 320 megabytes. They're going to say this is the line that you don't cross. It has hardwired XG audio, a huge 15-inch display that doesn't have the best contrast ratio in the world, but for the time, this would have been top of the line. It's difficult here with these laptops to compare them, because you're comparing 5 or 6 years against each other from like 1999 or 2000 up to 2006. And during that time, there was a huge amount of change. I'm going to show you why this isn't perfect. And it comes down to the S3 video card that's in this machine. Now, it can run everything. And Wolf to Wolf, it will do every single item, at least mostly. So this could have been a perfect laptop, but it's definitely not. And let me show you that by showing you its strength and weakness at the same time. I'm going to load up Lemmings, the classic early 90s game that would use Sound Blaster and AdLib sound. And we have sound here. Now I'll give you a sound demonstration. I'll record the speakers later, showing the sound quality of this hardware audio. But the screen is squished. This is stretched, so you can either have it even smaller, where you don't have the pixels messed up, or you can have it like this. So it detects native DOS windows as a widescreen aspect ratio, and technically the aspect ratio is, but all the CRTs back in the day would stretch this out to be full screen. Now if you plug this in VGA, as long as it's set to be on a VGA monitor, it's not going to be stretched like that. It's going to let your monitor do the stretching. Now if you duplicate this display, so it's displaying here and out the VGA, it's going to send this 1024 by 768 out over VGA, which is not ideal. So that's the first real killer here. The other thing is the XG audio does have pops in some applications, like MechWarrior 2, and I don't know how that would affect other audio hardware programs, but it is something I do want to bring up, because the YMF744 is not perfect, and this is the second laptop in this series that has one, and they both pop and click. So what are some of the great features about this laptop? Well, it's huge and chunky. It has a great touch point, or whatever you want to call the Toshiba version of the IBM nub. Nice floppy drive up front. You have CD, tons of I/O around. A great location for the speakers. The speakers are clear, and like the Toshibas did, you have hardware, you have the audio I/O here, and you have volume control on an analog dial. Fantastic. Also, since it's 500 megahertz P3, the noise level is very quiet, so it's not going to generate a ton of heat, and it's not going to make a ton of noise, and it's going to be performant for anything that you would normally throw at Windows 98. If you get one of these laptops, the first thing you need to do is tear it all apart and get to the battery. The backup CMOS battery, I believe, is right around here. If it hasn't leaked yet, it's going to leak, and if it does leak, the whole laptop is going to die. So you are like, you're playing Russian roulette if you get one of these without it being tested. So if that thing leaks, you're gonna have to replace other components, and I don't even know how bad the damage can get, because it can go down the wires and just take out boards, which happened on the Sony laptop that I had. So definitely, if you are planning to get one of these, get a battery. Even if the seller has said it's been replaced, just get it, open it up, replace it. That way you're safe for at least a few years before it explodes again. This is the Compaq EVO N600c, and it's one of the last Compaq laptops to have native DOS sound. Due to some creative guys on the Vogons forum, the audio is actually controllable in DOS via the hardware buttons, something that isn't possible on the N620c. GPU that is the Radeon M6, which has 32 megabytes of RAM, which is decently powerful. It's certainly powerful enough for most Windows 98 applications, even though this is a system that was essentially built for later Windows. As you can see, the display is actually pretty nice for 14 inches. It has good visibility around, good viewing angles. Contrast is not bad. It does have a slight red shift, and the backlights do tend to go out on these, so your mileage may vary getting a used one. The keyboard is nice. The form factor is excellent for the size. There's a great screen to body ratio, and it's really well laid out, especially since you have touchpad and the track point. Other benefits here, you don't have other notes here. You do not have a floppy drive. You do have a DVD drive. You have 2 USB ports on the side. LAN. The speakers are definitely decent enough. Not the best in the world, not the worst in the world. Average or above average definitely for the size. Overall, this is a very nice laptop, and it is not all that noisy. So the sound in DOS is an ESS Allegro. So with its emulated sound, it's not great for DOS sound. It will do DOS sound. It's not ideal for DOS sound. It sounds actually pretty terrible. So this machine is much better at emulated DOS than real DOS, I would say, just due to the sound. If you're not dealing with sound, it will run regular DOS just fine. The prices of these laptops are one of the main benefits as well. You can find parts, and they can be cheap. They can be almost free since they were used as corporate machines, or there might be people on eBay charging exorbitant prices for fully loaded models that have OSs. Like all my other laptops, this has a 128 gig SSD. It is an mSATA to IDE drive. It didn't work at first, but then it started working. I'm not quite sure why. It can be a bit flaky, so that is a warning. It is very easy to change the CMOS, which are lithium, by popping up these covers, so that is excellent. Overall, this is a very good laptop, and it's a very good small 14-inch laptop. It's hard to go wrong with these Compaqs. They are reliable, tough, and generally easy to fix.
Get ready! Go! This is where the fear starts for Samsung. Carolina Crusher is hanging 10.
This is the Compaq EVO N620c. The upgrade of this laptop over the N600 is that this one actually has the Pentium M processor, not a Pentium 4, and it is just as quiet as the Pentium 3. So bypassing the Pentium 4 means that there's a lot less power usage, and you actually get an upgrade here. So the downgrades on this laptop, since it's a very similar laptop, are no more DOS audio. Well, no more native DOS audio. You can still emulate, but you can't use the hardware buttons. So standard AC97, but a GPU upgrade as well to the Radeon 7500. Overall, the form factor is nearly identical. The USB is on the back. The I/O on the front is the same. The lights are the same. Location of the DVD drive is the same. And the keyboard is nearly identical, as well as the touchpad and track point. But you do get slight differences in the display, and I believe there are different models of these displays as well. This display is a little above average. The contrast ratio isn't great, but the motion handling is good, and the off-axis viewing is better than average, I would say. Just the contrast ratio isn't great. Still a 14-inch screen because it's basically the same chassis. It's a faster version of the N600c. You lose a little bit over the N600c, but you also gain quite a lot as well. Unlike the N600c, this one actually didn't have the same issue with upgrading to an SSD. So it was instantly detected and working. I did fix this one from a actual flooded computer, so I bought it broken and fixed it with parts that I found for the N620c, because these don't seem to pop up as often. So I thought it'd be an interesting laptop, but it was essentially free. Again, you may find these extremely cheap. They're old corporate laptops, but for the types of usage that you would have for Windows 98 machines, this will absolutely work perfectly as long as the I/O meets your requirements.
It's high noon in the Windy City. Get ready to head downtown for a showdown. Something completely different. You just unlocked the city bus.
This is the Dell Precision M20. the most powerful 14-inch laptop that we'll be looking at. Again, like the other ones, has been upgraded with an SSD, has 2 gigs of RAM, and has the standard Fire GL, which actually works here in Windows 98 just fine. It does not have DOS audio, so DOSBox also works in Windows 98, and there is no hardware volume control, so those buttons are only going to work in Windows XP. You're going to have to use shortcuts to create volume control if you want that with the keyboard. Otherwise, you'll be controlling it with the taskbar. So, this laptop, 2 gigahertz Pentium M. The speakers are actually good. So the speakers this is similar to the M70. The M70 is faster, but they both have these forward-firing speakers down here. Now, these speakers do sound good, but the problem is that they're down here. The other laptops are either on the sides, they're up here, ideally, as long as your hands aren't on them, or they're up here. But down in the front, it sounds great when it's like this, but that's not typically how you'd use a laptop, especially if you're going to use it in your lap. So it's hard to actually rate these. They sound good, but they definitely have issues in certain configurations where you're using it and you can't, like the sound is going to be muffled because you're covering over the actual speakers. So not a really well thought out design. It would have been much better to like put it right here on the armrest on the curve or somewhere else, except, you know, like straight out into your lap. You have dual touch controls on this. This is one of the last laptops, well, at least for this generation, that you'd see that went away pretty quickly from there, unless you are talking about IBM laptops. So, I.O. more basic on these types of laptops. You still have a DVD drive. You have your network, TV out, USB, modem, and VGA, but you're to the point where you start to lose a little bit of the additional I.O. as laptops get newer. But it's still amazing that this laptop runs Windows 98 natively, except for the Wi-Fi. With modern patches, you can easily run 2 gigs of RAM in Windows 98 without an issue. One thing, I don't use internet on Windows 98 because it seems ridiculous, but usually to boot up faster, I would either turn the network adapter into an additional modem so it doesn't look for an IP address, or uninstall it completely. But everything actually works on this. You've got your the display adapter is going to show up as an X600, but this is a V3100. Since they share the same basic chipset, the driver actually works just fine. This is the IBM ThinkPad A22p. It is an absolute beast of a laptop. Usually they're very expensive and they have reliability problems, specifically with heating issues underneath the laptop with the CPU and GPU. It's not a friendly way to start this, but I will say that these are absolutely classic and fantastic laptops. This is the last IBM ThinkPad that is fully DOS sound compatible, and likely the most powerful ThinkPad that is fully compatible with DOS, at least as far as audio goes. It has a great little floppy drive over here. The audio is here. It has hardware volume control. It has a nice recessed CD drive over on the side. Unlike some of the other laptops that I'm showing, these are almost impossible now to find new batteries for. So this one has a completely dead battery, and I don't know where to get a new one. So they don't seem to be made anymore, and I don't see anyone rebuilding them. The screen actually has a resolution of 1600 by 1200, which is really not ideal for Windows 98. So I have it running at a lower resolution here. DOS programs in Windows 98, not a problem. IBM has the best trackpoint implementation with nubs actually readily available. The system has one USB port. Overall a fantastic laptop, though it may not be the most reliable laptop. And who can't love the little keyboard light? So the Crystal Sound Fusion chip is not terrible. It's not great, but it is fully Sound Blaster compatible. So you heard the DOS sounds of it combined with the speakers. It's definitely better than most, but it's not the best option. This is the IBM T43p, and this is just about the last IBM that you'd want to try to use with native Windows 98 support. Now, I say native, but yes, the video works, the sound works. Fingerprint sensor is not going to work. Wi-Fi is not going to work. Sound is just typical AC97, so that actually works fine here. It's late 2006, I believe this model is, and anything beyond this, you're gonna have real troubles trying to get it to run Windows 98. So with that said, the next most difficult thing is a hard drive replacement. Number one, hard drive replacements on these without the official IBM supported hard drives will throw up an error in the BIOS that you can bypass and still boot. You need to flash a different BIOS to get rid of that error. Secondly, because there is a serial ATA to IDE converter on the motherboard, the mSATA converters don't usually work. I found one that did work. It was a real pain though. So again, there are issues with this laptop. It's also very rare for this particular one if you want the highest spec T43p option, and it may have its own set of reliability issues with soldering. Additionally, the CPU fan can be very noisy, so in order to quiet it down, you need to take apart the CPU fan and then drill a hole, which I've done, but I don't think I did it big enough because it still makes a little bit of vibration noise. But with that said, it is a very, very powerful laptop if you can get beyond that. And the screen is amazing. Now, this isn't a 5 out of 5 screen, and that's because of the blur. So this is 1600 by 1200, but the motion clarity isn't great. But this is a fully modern LCD, and you can see from the angles, this is leaps and bounds above some of the other things that we've seen. Like, this looks like a monitor, a high-end monitor from 2006. It would be a 5 out of 5 on the display scoring if you know, there was no ghosting there. So also the sound, unlike the A22, the speakers being up here, the volume control obviously is in the same spot, but the speakers are down here facing into your lap for some reason. So they are loud, they do sound good, but I'm not a huge fan of that placement, just because if you set it somewhere with that blocked, it's going to be, well, muffled. And overall, it's hard to recommend this laptop, but if you have one, you're going to have a hard time doing that much better than this, because it can run Windows 98, it can run XP, obviously, and as long as it stays alive, you're going to have a great laptop. This is the Dell Precision M70. It has a 16 by 10 screen, and by far is the most powerful laptop in this comparison video. The screen has a ridiculous 1920 by 1200, but being powered by the NVIDIA Quadro FX Go 1400, it is able to scale the screen for 4x3 applications without any issues at all. The Go 1400 works like a faster GeForce 6800, at least compared to the 6800 that I've seen. It has 256 megabytes of video RAM, and the system has 1 gig of system RAM, which is absolutely plenty for Windows 98 and mostly fine for Windows XP as well. Sound on this machine is powered by the AC97 Realtek codec, and it has front firing speakers, which aren't my favorite. Again, I think they could have easily put this on the curve, but instead it front fires. I don't think a workstation like this was really meant to be on your lap, but you know, the sound is better than other Dell laptops, but it's not in the best placement for you to actually hear the sound coming out of it. The volume control up here is not hardware controlled, at least in Windows 98. Yeah, 1900 by 1920 by 1200 is not the greatest resolution for Windows 98, especially on a 15.7-inch screen. You can easily run 4x3 applications. And not have the screen stretched. The contrast ratio is very nice. This laptop is very powerful and will absolutely run anything that you can run on Windows 98. The screen has a really nice matte finish, really good viewing angles. I would say the build quality is actually very good. Parts are fairly readily available. Batteries are readily available. You know, almost all the Dells have readily available parts. The plastic does scratch pretty easily. It does have a little bit of creakiness to it, but it is built like a tank. So all that plastic really protects it like a kind of an ugly eggshell in a way. If you can get one of these cheap enough and you don't mind the 16:10 aspect ratio, it's hard to, if you want an ultra powered Windows 98 laptop, like complete overkill, this is a great option. Again, if you don't mind widescreen and ridiculously high resolutions. Getting into the realm of extremely ridiculous laptops, this is the 17-inch Alienware M5700. It's powered by a GeForce 6800. It has a 17-inch screen that is glossy. It has Intel HD audio, which is very hard to get working with Windows 98. I don't know of anyone else that has, though I got help from people that have gotten HD audio working on other laptops. It has speakers that fire from here. It has a subwoofer. It has analog audio control on the side, which is really awesome. It has a nice large touchpad for the time. Usually everything else is a bit smaller with a nice side scrolling section as well. It has a large keyboard. It has Wi-Fi that works in XP only, does not work in Windows 98. Currently, this does have just a Pentium M at 1.7 gigahertz, but I will be upgrading that to a 2.1 gigahertz, which this normally comes with. Fan noise is actually very well controlled. It has a ton of I/O for the time, including lots of USB ports. I believe this is the most USB ports that any of the laptops have. Unfortunately, it does have SD, but it cannot read SDHC unless there's some magic driver out there that will enable it. Standard DVD drive around the back. This is the only laptop that has digital video out, so you can convert that to HDMI and go out to a modern display, which is really cool, along with S-Video. Overall, this would be, well, the screen is awesome on this. It would be perfect if it had a better contrast ratio. In the light here, it does look perfect. It is very glossy and reflective, but it has like no image lag or no image blur, which is fantastic. There's no blurring there. The screen is really fantastic. It would be 100% perfect if it was just 4:3, but 16:10 is fine, especially since NVIDIA allows you to scale the screen correctly. The colors are vivid, a really inviting screen to look at. Another note here, because of the size of the screen, because it's 17 inches and high resolution, it doesn't feel that hard to view this. It feels like a modern computer, honestly, which is amazing to natively run Windows 98 on it. It's very fast, and everything is running natively here in Windows 98. Again, this is at least audio-wise, this is at the absolute upper limit of what Windows 98 supports, and I'm amazed that people have figured out a way to get HD audio actually working on Windows 98. I love this laptop. It's absolutely one of my favorites. I wish it was 4:3, but at the same time, the screen is, oh, that's a really cool effect there. I hadn't seen that. The same time, because this feels like such a modern laptop, it's hard to go wrong. I don't know if I'd recommend this or not, because they either, you can get one or you can't. I got this one broken and fixed it. They're hard to find, and some people charge insane amounts of money for the old Alienwares. But I really have enjoyed my time working on this. I enjoy, taking it apart is really simple. It was built to be worked on. Parts are absolutely not readily accessible either. So these laptop hinge covers are actually from a Fujitsu. So yeah, good luck finding parts for these laptops, even though it's a kind of a generic chassis. I really do like the sound on this as well. The left, right, and subwoofer. The subwoofer doesn't really do much of anything, but the sound is nice and clear, and it's definitely one of the best laptops in this comparison.
We'll be fine.
I don't know how you can say that, although I will admit that the possibility of a resonance cascade scenario is extremely unlikely.
Gordon doesn't need to hear all this. He's a highly trained professional.
It's not shutting down. It's not.
This is the Acer Aspire 1703 SM, and it's quite possibly the craziest laptop ever made. What makes this laptop so wild is that, though you probably can't tell in the video, this is the only laptop ever made that has a 17-inch square LCD. Now it's 5:4, so it's 1280 by 1024, so it's not perfect for DOS. You would want 4:3. This being 5:4, oh, it's so close to being perfect, but you'll get little black bars if you play 4:3 content, which is fine. The NVIDIA drivers will do it. It is a very powerful laptop, not the most powerful, but absolutely as much power as you would ever need for Windows 98. And it's mind-blowing to look at this thing. Not only does this behemoth have a 17-inch screen, it normally comes with a full desktop hard drive, a big spinning 3.5-inch hard drive, which is crazy. No other laptop I've ever seen has that or even has room for that. I've replaced it with an SSD, which is a pain in itself. That would be a whole video on itself, trying to get the SSD to work in this, but this does have a parallel ATA SSD in it. It's only 64 gigs, but it's better than anything spinning. I bought this broken. Had a broken CPU fan. CPU fans and parts in general for this are not easy to find, and with Acer's numbering, it's a 1700, Acer 1700, but it's a 1703. I ordered a fan, 2 fans from China. One burned out, one came the wrong size, and it burned. The one that actually fit burned out within like a couple hours. So I've had to rig another fan in there, mounted, and it's working for now until I find and try another replacement coming from China. Hopefully that doesn't break as well. This laptop does actually have a floppy drive here. I guess it's not surprising considering the size, and a DVD drive here as well. So in Windows 98, there are 2 ways to control, well, there's normally in XP 2 ways to control the audio via the keyboard or the hotkeys on the front. That does not work in 98, so there's no hardware volume control, which is disappointing. It's an AC97 codec, so it's software-based rendering, which is fine for something this powerful that can run anything through DOSBox. But yeah, you're gonna have to use emulation for the sound. But CPU-wise, this is a Pentium 4. Going back to the CPU, this particular model usually comes with a 2.6. I've upgraded it to a mobile 2.8 because I had one, just to give it a little bit more oomph. Not the biggest fan of the Pentium 4, but at least in something as massive as this. I mean, this is, like, this trackpad looks tiny. This is normal size for the era, but on this, it's like a tiny little area, which is, this laptop is absolutely insanely huge. You have to see it in person. It will make you laugh. It's incredibly heavy, and on the back, it's got these standoffs that it stands on that lift the laptop a ½ inch off the ground just for more air clearance. But you can get into it just like a desktop. Basically, just remove a few screws and then it's like working on a desktop computer. Again, this is a crazy computer. If you can find it and it works, I would recommend it because it's really cool to have. And it has pretty much the best video card you could ask for in a Windows 98 machine, which is a GeForce FX Go 5600. That's powerful enough to play any application that you'd want to that will run on Windows 98, but not new enough that it will start breaking older applications. So pretty much outside of the sound card and possibly noise levels, this is a perfect laptop for anyone that has room for something so massive. This screen is really, truly, you'd have to compare it, like a 12-inch screen is a normal laptop compared to this. Even a new giant gaming laptop doesn't compare to this. This is taller than any 18-inch screen. I think it's probably comparable if you had a 20-inch screen, a 20-inch widescreen, and how tall it is. It's absolutely, like what you'd have on your desk in 2006 and not something that you'd have on a laptop. So yeah, very impressive, very fun to use, and the display is absolutely fantastic. We also need to talk about the sound. The sound comes out the front, which is, I guess, understandable in a way, but I mean, there is plenty of room on the deck. But the sound has a subwoofer. The sound is also very, very large from these speakers. So even though it's not my favorite position, the speakers here actually sound really, really good. And the sub adds to it because there's actually room for the sub to just add a little bit more noise to it. It doesn't really add that much sub bass frequencies, but it does add to a more fuller sound. So you'll see in the sound demo, this is one of the better sounding laptops for sure. This is the Compaq Presario 1800T. And as far as every laptop that I've tested so far, and except for maybe one or two models that may be out there in the wild that I haven't seen or don't have access to, I believe this is the best Windows 98 laptop. Starting with the sound. The sound, above everything else, even when they come with subs, this has the best speakers I've heard in a Windows 98 laptop by far. It's better than most modern laptops because you actually have these JBL speakers that are given room to breathe and make noise. They are on your wrists when you're using it. If you're above them though, it'll play sound at you. Really, these are real speakers. These speakers, I have hardly ever heard a laptop that actually sounds as good as this, just because they incorporated the speakers into the laptop in a smart way. It's not an afterthought. It's not on the sides. It's not underneath or on the front. These are real speakers, and there's this cool little display if you want to play a CD with the computer off for some reason. They did this on high-end models back in the late 90s and early 2000s. It has a 15-inch display, and the 15-inch display is better than average. It's very good for the time frame for the year 2000 or Windows 98 when this came out. It is not the greatest screen in the world though, so it's not a 5 out of 5. It would have been a 5 out of 5 when it came out. I'll give it a 4 out of 5 now, just because you're not going to find, as far as hitting the marks for something for Windows 98 in terms of DPI, you can see everything. It's 4:3. I'm going to give it a solid 4 out of 5 for that. What really sets this apart as well is it has a real GPU. Now there's some of these models that came with only 8 megabytes of VRAM, and those are way, way slower. This is the ATI Mobility M3 with 16 megs of RAM. Because I like this model so much and I've been able to get them, and I needed to fix them. I've had to fix this one, I had to fix my other one. I have 3 of these now. So this is the XL4 model. My other one has a 900 megahertz processor. This has an 800 megahertz Pentium 3 processor. To upgrade the processor to 900 megahertz, you need to do a BIOS flash. I think 800 on this one's fine. 900 is just slightly a bit faster. But the other great thing here is this has a real DOS audio sound card. And it's better than the XG sound card for a very good reason. When you play things like MechWarrior, it does not have the popping sound. So I've tested that. This is, well, the AC97s don't do that either, but this ESS Solo does not do that. It also has a very cool FM synthesizer, and it does not have wavetable sound, which is probably the one downside. If you could upgrade this and add wavetable sound, it would be perfect. The FM sound is super cool. It's super different, and to actually have an FM synthesizer built in that sounds this good. With 16 megabytes of VRAM, it can very, very easily run anything from Wolfenstein 3D, early 1990s DOS, up to at least 2000, 2001 stuff with moderately good frame rates. So with this even, it's actually in 3D Mark 99, it is just as fast or just slightly bit faster than the GeForce 2 Go. It is half as fast as the GeForce 2 Go with 16 megs in 3D Mark 00 and 01, but when you're talking DirectX 6, which, you know, this is Windows 98, this is just as fast with 16 megs of RAM as the GeForce 2 Go. The display is good. It has a fast pixel refresh. It does not have the greatest contrast and the greatest viewing angles, but it's better than average and it's better than bad. So again, when this came out, you're asking a lot of LCDs, especially in a laptop, to look at even this good, especially with this tiny little bezel. It is definitely top of the line for its time. It would be below average today, but it is above average for, and actually well above average for things that can actually run Windows 98. especially with the scaling. The scaling in this ATI video card is very nice, combined with 1024 by 768. So let's actually hear the sound, because that's the most impressive part.
More settlers on site. Bandits are hostile. Repeat, bandits are hostile.
HQ, this is Alpha Assault. I'm on my way, bearing 025.
ETA 34 seconds.
Alpha Assault, this is Bravo Cadet. I've got bandits all over me. Get down here.
Sit tight, Bravo 3. I've got visual.
I've got evacuators out. I'm targeting systems damage. I'm in bad shape.
Enemy detected.
Behind me, 2 of them. Be on the line.
Roger, I've got it.
Targeting.
It's got a lock on me. It's got a lock on me.
Targeting. Warning. Ammunition level critical. Weapons depleted.
Alpha Assault, this is HQ. What is your situation? Alpha Assault, this is HQ. What is your situation? Please comply.